The gold band felt heavier than it should as Amelia Sinclair twisted it around her finger, staring through the dusty window of the general store at the sacks of flour stacked against the far wall. Her stomach had been empty for 2 days now, and little Thomas, barely 3 years old, had stopped crying about his hunger that morning, which frightened her more than his tears ever could. The shopkeeper, a portly man named Henderson with calculating eyes, watched her from behind his counter as though he already knew what she had come to do. "I need flour," Amelia said, her voice steadier than she felt, "enough to last us through the month." Henderson wiped his hands on his apron, leaving streaks of dust across the fabric. "That will be $3, Mrs. Sinclair. Cash only." She had known that would be his answer. Everyone in Pahrump, Nevada knew the Sinclairs had nothing left. Her husband, James, had died 6 months ago in a mining accident up in the mountains, crushed when a shaft collapsed. The company had paid her exactly nothing, claiming James had violated safety procedures, though everyone knew the mine owner cut corners on timber supports to save money. The small house they had rented came with James's job, and she had been evicted within a month. Now she and Thomas lived in a lean-to behind the church, surviving on the charity of others, but charity had its limits in a town where most folks struggled to feed their own. Amelia pulled the ring from her finger, the simple gold band James had placed there 4 years ago when they married in St. Louis. She had been 19 then, full of hope about their future in the West. James had promised her a good life, and for a time, it had been good enough. He had loved her and Thomas, worked hard, came home each night covered in rock dust, but always with a smile. The ring was all she had left of him besides their son and her memories. "I will trade you this for the flour," she said, placing the ring on the counter. Henderson picked it up, held it to the light streaming through the window. "Real gold?" "Yes." He bit it, testing, then nodded. "This is worth more than 1 sack of flour, but I cannot give you cash difference. I will give you 2 sacks. That is my final offer." 2 sacks would last them 2 months if she was careful. 2 months to figure out what came next, to find work, to keep Thomas alive. She swallowed hard, fighting the tears that threatened. "All right." Henderson pocketed the ring and gestured to the flour. "Take what you need." The sacks were heavy, 50 pounds each. Amelia managed to hoist one onto her shoulder, staggering under the weight. She was thin now, much thinner than she had been when James was alive, and the hunger made her weak. Henderson made no move to help her. She dragged the first sack outside, left it by the door, then came back for the second. By the time she had both sacks on the wooden walkway outside, her arms trembled and sweat soaked through her faded calico dress, despite the October chill in the air. Pahrump was not much of a town, just one main street with a handful of buildings clustered along it, then scattered houses and tents spreading out into the desert. It had sprung up 3 years ago when someone found silver in the mountains, and now it was slowly dying as the easy ore played out. The wind blew constantly here, carrying red dust that got into everything, and the sun beat down mercilessly most of the year. The only reason anyone stayed was because they had nowhere else to go or nothing better waiting for them. Amelia looked at the 2 sacks and wondered how she would get them back to the lean-to. It was half a mile, and she could barely lift 1 sack, let alone carry both that far. She could make 2 trips, but that meant leaving Thomas alone longer, and she hated leaving him even for short periods. He was so small, so vulnerable. "Need help with those?" The voice was deep, rough like gravel, and came from behind her. Amelia turned and had to tilt her head back to look up at the man who had spoken. He was enormous, easily over 6 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they blocked out the sun. His hair was dark brown and hung past his collar, and a thick beard covered the lower half of his face. But it was his eyes that struck her pale blue, like ice, yet somehow warm when they looked at her. He wore buckskin clothing that had seen hard use, and a massive knife hung from his belt. Everything about him spoke of strength and danger, yet his expression was gentle. "I can manage," Amelia said, though they both knew it was a lie. The man looked at the flour, then at her, then back at the flour. "Where are you taking them?" "Behind the church." He nodded once, then bent and lifted both sacks as though they weighed nothing, one over each shoulder. "Show me." Amelia hesitated, but pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. She led the way down the street, acutely aware of the mountain man following her, aware of the curious stares from other townspeople. Strangers came through Pahrump regularly, prospectors, drifters, men running from something, but this man was different. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone completely comfortable in his own skin, someone who had nothing to prove. The lean-to was even more pitiful than she remembered, just some old boards propped against the back wall of the church, covered with a canvas tarp that had more holes than fabric. Thomas sat inside on their one blanket, playing with a wooden horse James had carved for him. When he saw his mother, his face lit up, then grew wary when he spotted the large stranger. The mountain man set the flour sacks down gently, as though worried he might break something. He looked around at their shelter, and Amelia felt shame burn through her. This was what her life had become. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That was kind of you." He studied her for a moment, those ice-blue eyes seeing too much. "When did you last eat?" "I'm fine." "That was not what I asked." Amelia lifted her chin. "We will be fine now. We have flour." The mountain man was silent for a long moment, then he reached into a leather pouch at his belt and pulled out several strips of dried meat. He held them out to Thomas. "You like venison, boy?" Thomas looked at his mother, who nodded. He took the meat with both hands and immediately began eating, tearing into it with the desperation of real hunger. The mountain man produced more strips, enough for several meals, and handed them to Amelia. She wanted to refuse, but Thomas was eating, and the sight of food in her son's belly mattered more than her pride. "Thank you," she said again. "I do not know how to repay you." "No need." He turned to go, then paused. "You should not be living like this. Winter is coming." "I know." What else could she say? They both knew she had no options. The mountain man looked like he wanted to say more, but instead he just nodded and walked away, his long stride carrying him quickly back toward the main street. Amelia watched him go, wondering who he was, why he had helped them. Then Thomas tugged at her skirt, and she turned her attention to making them something to eat, pushing thoughts of the mysterious stranger from her mind. His name was Ryder Ashford, though most people who knew him just called him Ryder if they called him anything at all. He had been living in the mountains west of Pahrump for the past 5 years, trapping and hunting, occasionally bringing furs and meat down to trade in town. He preferred the solitude of the high country, preferred the company of eagles and mountain lions to that of most men. At 32, he had seen enough of civilization to know he wanted no part of it, but something about the woman with the flour sacks had gotten under his skin. Maybe it was the desperation in her eyes that she tried so hard to hide, or the way she held herself with dignity despite obviously having nothing. Or maybe it was the boy, small and hungry and trusting. Ryder had been that age once before his own parents died and left him to make his own way in the world. He knew what it was to be hungry, to be cold, to be alone. He made his way to the saloon, one of only 3 buildings in Pahrump that could claim to be substantial. The bartender, a man named Crow who had lost his left hand in the war and wore a hook in its place, nodded as Ryder entered. "What can I get you?" "Whiskey and information." Crow poured the drink, slid it across the bar. "What kind of information?" "The woman living behind the church, with the boy." "Amelia Sinclair." Crow's expression grew sympathetic. "Sad story. Her husband died in the mine collapse last spring. Company threw her out, and she has been scraping by ever since. Good woman, by all accounts. Proper lady from back east. This life is too hard for someone like her." "She has no family? No one to help?" "If she did, she would not be here." Crow wiped the bar with a rag. "Some of the church ladies help when they can, but everyone is struggling. And there is talk." "What kind of talk?" Crow looked uncomfortable. "Man named Garrett runs the boarding house. He's been sniffing around her, making offers, says he will give her a room, feed the boy, if she will work for him. But everyone knows what kind of work he means. She keeps refusing. But winter is coming. Desperation makes people do things they would not otherwise consider." Ryder downed the whiskey, felt it burn down his throat. He had seen Garrett around town, a soft man with mean eyes and wandering hands. The thought of him touching Amelia made anger flare hot in Ryder's chest, surprising in its intensity. He barely knew the woman. But some things were just wrong, and a man like Garrett taking advantage of a widow and her child was wrong in a way that demanded action. "The ring," Ryder said. "The one she traded for flour. Henderson still have it?" Crow raised his eyebrows. "Probably. He just got it today, so he's not had time to sell it yet. Why? How much would he want for it? More than it is worth, knowing Henderson. Maybe $20? Ryder had $43 in his pocket from the last load of furs he had sold, the profit from 3 months of hard work in the mountains. $20 was a significant chunk of that money. But he had no wife, no children, no one depending on him. His needs were simple. And something in him recoiled at the thought of Amelia's wedding ring, traded in desperation, ending up on the finger of some other woman who knew nothing of the sacrifice it represented. He finished his drink and headed back to the general store. Henderson was still behind the counter, counting coins and making notations in a ledger. He looked up when Ryder entered, and his expression grew wary. Men like Ryder made men like Henderson nervous. "The ring," Ryder said without preamble. "The gold band the widow traded today. How much?" Henderson licked his lips. "That's a fine piece. Real gold. I was thinking $30. Ryder took a step closer to the counter, and Henderson stepped back. "You gave her 2 sacks of flour for it. Flour costs $1.50 a sack. That is $3. Now you want 30? That's quite a profit." "Business is business," Henderson said, but his voice shook slightly. Ryder pulled out his money, counted out $15, and laid it on the counter. "Fair price, considering what you paid. Take it or I walk out and you can explain to everyone in town how you cheated a widow and I called you on it." Henderson's face flushed, but he knew he was cornered. A man's reputation mattered in a small town, and Ryder had just made it clear he would make an issue of this. "Fine. 15. He disappeared into the back room and returned with the ring, a simple gold band worn smooth from wear. Ryder took it, felt the weight of it in his palm. Such a small thing to mean so much. He pocketed it and left without another word. The next question was what to do with it. He could simply give it back to Amelia, but that might embarrass her, make her feel like an object of charity. And besides, a ring would not solve her real problems. She needed security, safety, a way to survive the winter and beyond. The ring would just end up traded again the next time she got desperate enough. An idea was forming in his mind, reckless and impractical, but Ryder had learned to trust his instincts. They had kept him alive through more than one dangerous situation, and his instincts told him that Amelia Sinclair mattered, that she was worth taking a risk for. He made his way back behind the church as the sun was setting, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and red. Amelia was sitting outside the lean-to, watching Thomas play. She looked up when Ryder approached, surprise and something else, maybe wariness crossing her face. "You again," she said. "I brought something." Ryder held out the ring. Amelia stared at it, then at him, confusion in her dark eyes. "I do not understand. How did you—" "Bought it back from Henderson." "Why would you do that?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Ryder crouched down so he was at eye level with her, still keeping a respectful distance. "Because some things should not be sold, no matter how hungry you are. This meant something to you." Amelia took the ring with shaking hands, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I cannot afford to buy it back from you. I have nothing." "I am not asking you to buy it." Ryder pulled a sack from his shoulder, one he had filled at the general store after purchasing the ring. Inside were more supplies: flour, beans, salt pork, coffee, sugar. "This too." "I do not understand." Amelia was crying openly now. "Why are you doing this? You do not even know me. You needed help. I could help." It was simple in Ryder's mind, though he could tell it was not simple for her. "No one does something for nothing. What do you want from me?" The question hung in the air between them. Ryder could see the fear in her eyes, the expectation of demands that would come with a price she could not afford to pay. He understood. In her position, she had every reason to be suspicious. "Nothing," he said firmly. "I want nothing from you. You are in a hard spot through no fault of your own. I have the means to make it a little easier. That is all." Amelia studied his face, searching for deception, for hidden motives. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because some of the tension left her shoulders. "Thank you. I do not know what else to say, except thank you." "This lean-to is not going to keep you safe through winter," Ryder said, changing the subject. "Nevada winters can be harsh, especially at night." "I know. I'm trying to save enough to rent a room somewhere, but it is difficult. I have a cabin. Ryder said, the words coming out before he had fully thought them through. Up in the mountains, about 10 miles west of here, it is small but sturdy. Stone fireplace, good roof. I'm heading back up there tomorrow. You and the boy could come with me, stay there for the winter. Amelia's eyes widened. I could not possibly. That would not be proper. There is a mining camp about 2 miles from my cabin, Ryder continued, as if she had not spoken. Maybe 20 men working a claim up there. They could use someone to cook for them, do laundry, mend clothes. They would pay cash money. And you would be safe. I would make sure of that. You are suggesting I leave town, go into the mountains with a stranger, on the promise of work that may or may not exist? When she put it like that, it did sound insane. But Ryder pressed on. The work exists. I know the men running that camp. They are decent fellows, and they have been complaining about their own cooking for months, and I am not suggesting anything improper. You and Thomas would have the cabin. I would sleep outside or build myself a smaller shelter nearby. We would be neighbors, nothing more. But you would be warm and safe, and you would have a way to earn money. Amelia looked at Thomas, who had fallen asleep on the blanket, exhausted from the excitement of having food in his belly. When she looked back at Ryder, there was something different in her expression, not trust exactly, but a desperate kind of hope. Why would you give up your cabin? I have spent most of the last 5 years sleeping under the stars, Ryder said. The cabin is just a place I built to store supplies and wait out the worst storms. I do not need it the way you do. And you want nothing in return? No expectations? Only that you take good care of the place, Ryder said. I put a lot of work into building it. Amelia twisted the ring on her finger, the ring that somehow had found its way back to her. If I agreed to this, when would we leave? Tomorrow morning, early. That is very soon. Winter does not wait for anyone to be ready. She was quiet for a long time, weighing the offer, weighing the risk. Finally, she nodded. All right, but I have conditions. You must promise to keep your distance, to respect my boundaries. I am a widow, and I will not have people thinking improper things about me. You have my word. And if the work at the mining camp does not materialize, or if I feel unsafe for any reason, you will bring us back to town immediately. Agreed. Amelia held out her hand, and Ryder shook it, her small hand disappearing in his large one. Her skin was soft despite the calluses from hard work, and he felt something stir in his chest that he quickly pushed down. This was about helping someone in need, nothing more. I will be here at dawn, he said, standing. Pack whatever you have. I will provide the rest. He left before she could change her mind, before he could question what he was doing. As he walked back toward the boarding house where he had rented a room for the night, he tried to understand what had possessed him to make such an offer. He valued his solitude, had built his entire life around being alone. Inviting a woman and a child into that life, even temporarily, was reckless. But the truth was, he had seen something in Amelia that called to him. Strength wrapped in vulnerability, pride mixed with desperation, beauty shining through exhaustion. And the boy, small and innocent, deserved better than to grow up cold and hungry in a lean-to behind a church. If Ryder could give them a chance at something better, even if just for one winter, then maybe the money he had spent on the ring and supplies was the best investment he had ever made. The next morning arrived cold and clear, frost glittering on the ground like scattered diamonds. Ryder loaded his 2 pack horses with supplies, then led them through the quiet town to the church. Amelia was waiting, Thomas bundled in a thin blanket beside her, their belongings fit in a single small bag. Ready? Ryder asked. Amelia looked back at Pa Rump one last time, at the town that had promised so much and delivered so little. Then she nodded. Ready? Ryder lifted Thomas onto one of the horses, securing him carefully, then helped Amelia up behind the boy. His hands spanned her waist easily, and he was aware of how light she was, how fragile. She held Thomas close as Ryder took the lead rope and began walking, leading them out of town and into the mountains. The trail was steep and rocky, winding through high desert terrain dotted with sagebrush and juniper. As they climbed higher, the vegetation changed, pine trees appearing in greater numbers. The air grew thinner and cooler. Thomas fell asleep against his mother, lulled by the rocking motion of the horse. But Amelia remained alert, her eyes taking in everything around them. Have you lived in the mountains long? She asked after several hours of silence. 5 years. Do you not get lonely? Ryder considered the question. Sometimes, but people complicate things. Animals do not lie or cheat or betray you. People also provide comfort and companionship. Some people, others just bring pain. Amelia was quiet, and Ryder wondered if he had said too much, but then she spoke again, her voice soft. My husband used to say something similar. He had been hurt badly before we met, by family, by people he thought were friends. He said I was the first person he had trusted in years. What made him trust you? I have no idea, but I'm glad he did. We had 4 good years together before the accident. That is more than some people ever get. They walked in silence after that, the only sounds their footsteps and the jingle of the horse's tack. Around midday, Ryder called a halt near a small stream. He helped Amelia and Thomas down, then unpacked food, bread, cheese, dried fruit. They ate sitting on rocks by the water, Thomas coming alive enough to throw pebbles into the stream and laugh at the splashes. He seems like a good boy, Ryder observed. He is. He looks like his father. There was sadness in Amelia's voice, but also warmth. Sometimes it hurts to look at him and see James staring back at me. But it is also a gift. James lives on through Thomas. How old are you? Ryder asked, then immediately wished he had not. It was too personal a question for someone he barely knew. But Amelia did not seem offended. 23. I know I look older. This life has been hard. You look tired, Ryder said honestly. Not old. She smiled at that, a real smile that transformed her face. Ryder caught a glimpse of what she must have looked like before grief and hardship had worn her down, and the sight made his chest tighten. They continued on through the afternoon, climbing steadily higher. The terrain grew more rugged, the trail narrower. Ryder kept a careful eye on Amelia, making sure she was holding up, but she proved tougher than she looked. She never complained, never asked for breaks beyond what he offered. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they rounded a bend, and the cabin came into view. It sat in a small clearing surrounded by tall pines, built from hand-hewn logs that had weathered to silver gray. Smoke would rise from the stone chimney on cold days, though no smoke rose now. A small porch ran along the front, and shutters covered the windows. This is it, Ryder said, hearing the pride in his own voice. He had built this place with his own hands, every log cut and fitted, every stone in the fireplace carefully chosen. It was not much by most standards, but it was solid and dry and would keep the winter at bay. Amelia slid down from the horse, then lifted Thomas down. She walked slowly toward the cabin, taking it in. Ryder unlocked the door and pushed it open, then stood back to let her enter first. The interior was simple but functional. One large room with a fireplace taking up most of one wall, a rope bed in one corner, a table and 2 chairs, shelves along the walls. A ladder led up to a small loft where Ryder stored furs and supplies. The floor was packed earth covered with a rug made from animal skins. Everything was neat and clean, better maintained than most bachelor cabins. You built this yourself? Amelia asked, wonder in her voice. Over the course of one summer. It was hard work, but worth it. She ran her hand along the mantel above the fireplace, feeling the smoothness of the wood. It is beautiful. It is yours for the winter. I will show you where everything is, how the stove works, where the well is. Tomorrow I will take you to the mining camp, introduce you to the men, see about that work. Where will you sleep? I will build a lean-to against the back wall. Will not take more than a day or 2. Until then, I will be fine under the stars. Amelia looked like she wanted to protest, but Thomas tugged at her skirt and she turned her attention to getting him settled. Ryder brought in their supplies, stocked the shelves, showed Amelia how to work the damper on the fireplace. He demonstrated the water pump outside, the root cellar where vegetables could be stored, the shed where firewood was stacked. As darkness fell, he got a fire going in the fireplace, the flickering light casting dancing shadows on the walls. The temperature was dropping fast, but inside the cabin it was warm and cozy. Amelia made a simple dinner from the supplies Ryder had brought: beans and salt pork, and they ate together at the small table, Thomas sitting on his mother's lap. This is the best meal I have had in months, Amelia said, though Ryder suspected it was the warmth and safety as much as the food itself that made it taste good. After dinner, Amelia put Thomas to bed, tucking him into the rope bed with all their blankets. The boy was asleep before his head hit the pillow. She stood looking down at him for a long moment, and when she turned back to Ryder, there were tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what this means, to see him warm and fed and safe. I was so afraid." "You do not have to be afraid anymore." The words came out more intense than Ryder intended, but they were true. He would not let anything happen to her or the boy. He had made himself responsible for them, and Ryder took his responsibilities seriously. "I should let you get some rest," he said, heading for the door. "I will be right outside if you need anything. Just call out." "Ryder?" He turned back. "Why are you really doing this? Please, I need to understand." He thought about lying, about giving her some easy answer, but Amelia deserved the truth, even if he did not fully understand it himself. "Because when I saw you trading that ring for flour, I saw myself, not literally, but I saw what it is to have nothing, to be alone, to be desperate. I have been there, and I remember the people who helped me when I had nothing, the ones who gave me a chance when they did not have to. Maybe this is my way of paying that forward." Amelia crossed the room and did something unexpected. She took his hand, squeezed it gently. "You are a good man, Ryder Ashford." He left before he could do something foolish like pull her into his arms, seeking comfort he had not known he was missing. Outside, the night was cold and clear, stars blazing overhead in numbers that never ceased to amaze him. Ryder unrolled his bedding near the cabin's back wall, but sleep was a long time coming. He kept thinking about the woman and child inside, kept wondering what he had gotten himself into. The next morning dawned bright and cold. Ryder woke to find Amelia already up, smoke rising from the chimney. When he went inside, she had coffee brewing and was making biscuits from the flour he had brought. "Good morning," she said, looking more rested than he had yet seen her. "I hope you do not mind. I found your coffee and thought you might appreciate some." "Best wake-up I have had in years," Ryder said, accepting the cup she poured for him. The coffee was strong and hot, exactly how he liked it. They ate breakfast together, then Ryder led Amelia and Thomas through the forest to the mining camp. It was a rough collection of tents and one larger cabin, situated near a stream where the men panned for gold. A half-dozen miners were already at work, bent over their pans in the icy water. The camp foreman was a man named Dutch Sullivan, a grizzled prospector in his 50s with a salt-and-pepper beard and kind eyes. He looked up when Ryder called his name, then walked over, wiping his wet hands on his pants. "Ryder, good to see you. What brings you down from your mountain?" "Dutch, this is Mrs. Amelia Sinclair and her son Thomas. She's looking for work, and I thought you boys might need someone who can cook and do laundry." Dutch's eyes lit up. "Can you cook, madam?" "Yes," Amelia said. "I can cook, clean, mend clothes, tend to minor injuries, whatever you need." "What we need," Dutch said fervently, "is to eat something other than burned beans and lumpy biscuits. My partner Jake has been doing the cooking, and he could burn water. If you can make a decent meal, we will pay you well. Say, $10 a week plus food?" Amelia's eyes widened. $10 a week was more than she had dared hope for. "That is very generous. It is worth it to not have to eat Jake's cooking anymore. When can you start?" "Right now, if you need me." Dutch showed her the camp's supplies, the cooking area, the state of the men's clothes that needed mending. It was clear they had been living like the bachelors they were, and Amelia immediately began making mental lists of everything that needed to be done. Thomas stayed close to his mother, shy around the rough-looking miners, but they were gentle with him, and one man carved him a wooden whistle that made Thomas smile. Ryder watched Amelia work, watched her move through the camp with purpose and confidence. This was what she had needed, not charity, but opportunity. A chance to use her skills and earn her own way. She would do well here, he could tell. As the morning wore on, Dutch pulled Ryder aside. "That was a good thing you did, bringing her here. Most men would not have bothered. She needed help. Pretty woman like that, widow, alone in the world. You planning to make a move?" "No," Ryder said, maybe too quickly. "She's just someone who needed help, that is all." Dutch gave him a knowing look, but did not push. "If you say so. But a blind man could see she is something special. Do not wait too long to figure out what you want, or someone else might figure it out first." Ryder did not respond, just headed back to the cabin to start building his lean-to. He told himself Dutch was wrong, that he had no romantic interest in Amelia. She was a widow still grieving her husband, a woman with a child, someone who had made it clear she expected nothing but respect from him. Getting involved would be complicated and messy, and Ryder had spent 5 years avoiding exactly that kind of complication. But as he worked on his shelter, splitting logs and fitting them together, his mind kept drifting back to Amelia. The way she had smiled when she saw the cabin, the tears in her eyes when she thanked him, the gentle way she cared for Thomas. The strength it must have taken to trade her wedding ring rather than give up, to keep fighting when everything seemed hopeless. She was remarkable, and Ryder was not fool enough to pretend otherwise. Over the next few weeks, they settled into a routine. Amelia spent her days at the mining camp cooking meals and tending to the miners' needs. Thomas played in the camp or napped in a corner while his mother worked. The miners adored them both, and it was not uncommon for Ryder to arrive and find Thomas sitting on someone's knee, listening to tall tales about prospecting and adventure. The men had adopted them as camp mascots, and Ryder knew they would protect Amelia and her son with their lives. Evenings, Amelia and Thomas returned to the cabin. Ryder would usually be there, having spent his day hunting or checking his trap lines. He always made sure to give them privacy, staying in his lean-to or finding reasons to be elsewhere. But increasingly, Amelia invited him to stay for dinner. She cooked from the supplies the mining camp provided, and the meals were simple but delicious, far better than anything Ryder had ever made for himself. They talked during those dinners, conversations that started awkward but gradually became easier. Amelia told him about growing up in St. Louis, the daughter of a shopkeeper who had died when she was 16. Her mother had died in childbirth when Amelia was just a baby, so when her father passed, she had been alone. James had been working in her father's shop, and after a brief courtship, they had married. He had wanted to try his luck in the West, and she had come with him, leaving everything familiar behind. "Did you regret it?" Ryder asked one evening as they watched the sunset from the cabin's porch. "Coming west?" "Sometimes," Amelia admitted, "especially after James died. But then I look at Thomas and think about how much James loved him, how happy we were for those few years, and I cannot regret any of it. Even the hard parts led me here, to this moment, and things are better now than they have been in a long time." Ryder told her about his own past, things he rarely shared with anyone. He had grown up in Virginia, the son of a farmer. His parents had died when he was 12, cholera, and he had been sent to live with an uncle who beat him regularly. At 15, Ryder had run away, heading west with nothing but the clothes on his back. He had worked as a ranch hand, a railroad laborer, a buffalo hunter. He had been to places Amelia had only read about: the Colorado goldfields, the Wyoming territories, California during the rush. He had seen men at their best and worst, and mostly he had seen them at their worst. "That is why I prefer the mountains," he said. "Up here things are simpler. An animal is what it is. A wolf is not pretending to be a sheep. But people, they are always pretending, always hiding who they really are." "Not always," Amelia said softly. "Some people are exactly who they seem to be." She was looking at him when she said it, and Ryder felt heat rise in his face. He was not used to being seen so clearly. As October turned to November, the weather grew colder. The first snow fell, dusting the mountains in white. Ryder spent a day chopping extra firewood, stacking it high beside the cabin. He repaired the shutters, checked the roof for leaks, did everything he could think of to make sure Amelia and Thomas would be comfortable through the coming winter. One evening, after putting Thomas to bed, Amelia came outside to find Ryder sitting on the porch, carving something from a piece of wood. She sat down beside him, close enough that he could feel her warmth through the cold air. "What are you making?" "A toy horse for Thomas. Figured he could use a few more toys." Amelia watched him work, his large hands surprisingly deft as they shaped the wood. "You are very good at that." "Had a lot of practice. When you spend as much time alone as I do, you get good at entertaining yourself." "Do you ever miss it, being around other people?" Ryder thought about it. "I used to think I did not, but lately—" He trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. "Lately what?" He looked at her then, really looked at her. In the lamplight spilling from the cabin's windows, her face was soft and beautiful, her dark eyes warm. She had gained a little weight over the past weeks, the hollows in her cheeks filling out, and she looked younger, more like the 19-year-old girl who had married James with such hope. Lately I've been enjoying the company, Ryder admitted. Amelia smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. I have been enjoying it too, more than I probably should. Why should you not? Because I'm a widow, because people will talk, because I am not sure what this is, what is happening between us. Ryder set down his carving. What do you think is happening? I think I am starting to feel things I should not feel. I think I look forward to seeing you each day more than is proper. I think Thomas is starting to see you as a father figure. And that terrifies me because I do not know what happens when winter ends and we go our separate ways. Her honesty deserved honesty in return. I am not good at this, Ryder said. At feelings, at talking about them, I've spent years avoiding exactly this kind of situation. But you are right. Something is happening between us. I feel it too. What do we do about it? I do not know. You are still grieving your husband. I'm not the kind of man who settles down. This could be a disaster. It could be, Amelia agreed, or it could be something wonderful. We will not know unless we take the risk. She reached out and took his hand, her fingers lacing through his. They sat like that for a long time, not speaking, just being together in the quiet mountain night. It was not much, just the simple act of holding hands, but it felt like everything. Winter came in earnest in late November. Snow fell heavily, blanketing the mountains in several feet of white. The mining camp shut down, the men retreating to the relative warmth of the town for the winter. Dutch paid Amelia everything he owed her plus a generous bonus and made her promise to return in the spring. With the camp closed, Amelia had no reason to leave the cabin each day. She and Thomas stayed close to home, and Ryder found himself spending more time with them. He taught Thomas how to track animals in the snow, how to recognize different types of trees, how to tell direction by the position of the sun. The boy followed him everywhere, hero worship clear in his eyes. And with Amelia, things continued to deepen. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told him about books she had read, dreams she had once had of seeing the ocean. He told her about the places he had been, the things he had seen. They laughed together, comfortable in each other's presence in a way that felt natural and right. One evening in early December, after Thomas had gone to bed, Amelia asked Ryder to stay. Not in the lean-to, not outside, but inside the cabin. She made him a pallet near the fireplace, insisting he needed to get out of the cold. Ryder protested weakly, knowing it was not proper, but the truth was he was tired of sleeping alone in his drafty shelter. He accepted her offer. That night, lying in the warm cabin with Amelia just a few feet away in the bed, Ryder felt something he had not felt in years. Contentment. Not just the absence of discomfort, but actual happiness. The knowledge that he was exactly where he was supposed to be, with exactly who he was supposed to be with. He woke in the middle of the night to find Amelia sitting beside him, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. I could not sleep, she whispered. Ryder sat up. What is wrong? Nothing is wrong. Everything is right, and that scares me. I feel like I am betraying James by being this happy with someone else. Your husband would want you to be happy. I know. Logically, I know that. James was a good man, and he loved me enough that he would want me to move on, to find joy again. But my heart, she pressed a hand to her chest. My heart feels guilty. Ryder took her hand. There is no timeline for grief. You are allowed to feel however you feel. And you are allowed to be happy, even if part of you feels guilty about it. Both things can be true at the same time. Amelia squeezed his hand. When did you become so wise? I am not wise. I just know what it is to carry guilt and grief. My parents died because I survived. I could not save them. For years, I thought I did not deserve to be happy when they were dead. But eventually, I realized they would hate knowing I was torturing myself. They would want me to live, really live. I'd not just exist. Your husband would want the same for you. She leaned forward and kissed him then, soft and tentative, her lips barely brushing his. Ryder froze, surprised, and Amelia started to pull back, embarrassment flooding her face. But Ryder caught her, cupping her face in his hands, and kissed her back, really kissed her, pouring into it everything he had been feeling but could not find words for. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I'm sorry, Amelia said. That was forward of me. Do not apologize, never apologize for that. She smiled, shy and pleased. "Stay with me? Just to sleep, nothing more. I do not want to be alone tonight." Ryder climbed into the bed beside her, and Amelia curled against his chest, her head fitting perfectly under his chin. He wrapped his arms around her, held her close, and felt her relax into sleep. Thomas was on her other side, so the three of them were cocooned together, a makeshift family born of circumstance and choice. Ryder lay awake for a long time, listening to Amelia breathe, feeling the weight of her in his arms. He had not shared a bed with a woman in years, and never like this with such tenderness and trust. It felt sacred, this moment, and he committed it to memory, knowing it was something he would carry with him always. The winter passed in a blur of snow and cold and growing closeness. Ryder and Amelia continued to share the bed, though they did not take things further physically. It was enough to hold each other, to wake up together, to share quiet conversations in the dark. Thomas accepted Ryder's constant presence with the easy adaptability of children, and soon he was calling Ryder by name, asking him questions, seeking his approval. Ryder taught them both how to survive in the mountains. He showed Amelia how to set snares, how to cure meat, how to read weather signs. She proved an apt pupil, quick to learn and unafraid of hard work. They went on expeditions together through the snow, Ryder breaking trail while Amelia and Thomas followed in his footsteps. On the way back, Thomas would ride on Ryder's shoulders, laughing as they ducked under snow-laden branches. For Christmas, Ryder carved a whole set of animals for Thomas: horses, bears, wolves, deer. Thomas was delighted, lining them up on the cabin floor and making up elaborate stories about their adventures. Amelia gave Ryder a shirt she had sewn from fabric she had purchased with her earnings, the stitching fine and even. Ryder gave her a necklace he had made from polished stones he found in the stream, simple but beautiful. She cried when she saw it, touched that he had thought to make her something personal. They celebrated the holiday with a feast. Amelia cooked venison roast, biscuits, dried apples stewed with cinnamon. After Thomas fell asleep, they sat by the fire, and Ryder finally said the words that had been building in him for weeks: "I love you." Amelia turned to look at him, surprise and joy warring on her face. "What?" "I love you. I know it is fast. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is complicated, but I cannot keep it inside anymore. I love you, Amelia. I love Thomas. I love the life we have built here together, even if it is temporary. I needed you to know." Tears spilled down Amelia's cheeks. "I love you too. I've been so afraid to say it, afraid it meant I was letting James go. But I realize now that loving you does not mean I love James any less. My heart is big enough for both." Ryder pulled her into his arms, kissed her deeply. "Marry me," he said when they broke apart. "I know it is soon. I know we have only known each other a few months, but I have never been more sure of anything. Marry me, Amelia. Let me be a husband to you and a father to Thomas. Let us make this real." "Yes," Amelia said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." Ryder slipped the gold wedding ring, her original ring, the one he had bought back from Henderson, onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as though it had been waiting all this time to come home. They married in early January, on a clear, cold day when the sky was so blue it hurt to look at. Dutch and some of the miners came up from town to witness the ceremony, which was performed by a traveling preacher who happened to be passing through Pahrump. They stood in front of the cabin with Thomas between them, and when the preacher asked if Ryder would take Amelia as his wife, Ryder's voice was strong and sure. "I will." When he kissed his bride, the miners cheered, and Thomas clapped his hands, delighted even though he did not fully understand what was happening. There was a celebration afterward with food and music and dancing. Dutch played the fiddle, and Ryder danced with his wife under the pine trees, snow falling gently around them. That night, after the guests had left and Thomas was asleep, Ryder and Amelia finally came together as husband and wife. It was tender and passionate, a joining of two people who had found each other against all odds. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Amelia traced patterns on Ryder's chest with her finger. "I never thought I would be happy again," she said quietly. "After James died, I thought that part of my life was over. But you gave me a reason to hope." "You gave me a reason to live," Ryder countered. "I was just existing before, going through the motions. You and Thomas made me remember what it means to have something worth fighting for." The winter finally broke in March, the snow melting to reveal the brown earth beneath. The mining camp reopened, and Amelia returned to cooking for the miners, though now she went as Ryder's wife, not as a desperate widow. The miners treated her with even more respect, and Ryder became a frequent presence at the camp, helping with heavy labor, offering his skills. As spring turned to summer, they talked about their future. The cabin was too small for a growing family, so Ryder began building an addition, expanding it into a proper house. He also started trapping more seriously, selling furs in Pahrump and saving the money. They talked about maybe buying land, starting a small ranch, creating something permanent. In June, Amelia discovered she was pregnant. She told Ryder one evening after Thomas was asleep, nervous about his reaction, but Ryder swept her into his arms, joy written across his face. "A baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "Our baby. Are you happy?" "I'm more than happy. I am blessed." Thomas was excited to learn he would be a big brother, though he did not fully understand what that meant. He started helping his mother more, trying to be responsible, and Ryder felt a surge of pride watching the boy grow. The pregnancy was not easy. Amelia suffered from terrible sickness in the first months, and Ryder was constantly worried about her. But she was strong, and with him there to support her, she pushed through. As her belly grew, Ryder found himself marveling at the miracle of it, the fact that they had created a new life together. In January, almost exactly a year after they had married, Amelia went into labor. The birth was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Ryder stayed with her the entire time, holding her hand, offering water, doing whatever he could to help. Dutch had fetched a midwife from town, a capable woman who guided them through the process. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, their son was born. He came into the world screaming, healthy and strong. Ryder held him for the first time and felt something break open inside him. This tiny person, his son, was more precious than anything he had ever known. They named him Jacob, after Ryder's father. Thomas was thrilled with his baby brother, constantly wanting to hold him and help. The cabin rang with the sounds of family crying, laughing, the small noises of daily life. It was everything Ryder had never known he wanted. As the months passed, they continued to build their life together. The house was completed, with 2 bedrooms and a proper kitchen. Ryder bought some land near the cabin, registering it legally so they would have security. He built a barn and purchased chickens, a cow, a few pigs. They were becoming homesteaders, putting down roots. Amelia's work at the mining camp ended when summer came and the miners moved on to new claims. But by then, they did not need the money as desperately. Ryder's trapping and occasional work in town brought in enough to support them, and Amelia focused on their home and children. On their second anniversary, they stood together on the porch of their expanded cabin, watching Thomas play with Jacob in the yard. The mountains rose around them, majestic and eternal. The sky was the impossible blue that only existed at high altitude, and the air smelled of pine and snow. "Do you ever regret it?" Ryder asked. "Leaving Pahrump, coming up here with a stranger, taking such a risk?" Amelia leaned into him, and he wrapped his arm around her waist. "Not for a single moment. Trading that ring was the hardest thing I ever did, but it led me to you. To this. I would do it again 1,000 times. I would buy that ring back 1,000 times, Ryder said. Whatever it took to bring you into my life." She smiled up at him, love shining in her eyes. "We are lucky, you and I. Not everyone gets a second chance at happiness." "We make our own luck," Ryder said, "by being brave enough to take chances, to trust, to love even when it is scary." Thomas called out then, wanting his father to come play, and Ryder went, scooping up Jacob on the way. Amelia watched them together, her husband and sons, and felt contentment settle deep in her bones. The journey from that desperate day in Pahrump, when she had traded everything she had for survival, to this moment of perfect happiness, had been neither long nor easy. But every step had been worth it. The years that followed brought both challenges and joys. There were hard winters when supplies ran low, summers when drought threatened their small farm. There were illnesses and injuries, moments of fear when one of the children fell sick or got hurt. But through it all, Ryder and Amelia faced everything together, their love the foundation that held them steady. Thomas grew into a tall, capable young man who helped his father with the heavy work. Jacob proved to be adventurous and wild, always climbing trees and exploring, giving his mother near constant heart attacks. When Jacob was 3, Amelia gave birth to twin girls, Grace and Hope, who filled the house with even more noise and laughter. Ryder expanded the house again, adding more rooms, building furniture with his own hands. The cabin that had once been a simple bachelor's shelter became a real home, filled with the evidence of lives lived and loved. Children's drawings hung on the walls, carved toys littered the floor, the smell of baking bread was nearly constant. They never returned to Pahrump to live, though they visited occasionally for supplies. Each time Amelia was struck by how much her life had changed. The lean-to behind the church was long gone, torn down or collapsed. The general store had changed hands, Henderson having sold out to someone else, but the memory of that desperate day, of trading her wedding ring for flour, never left her. It was a reminder of how far they had come, of how much they had overcome. Ryder taught all the children mountain skills, tracking, hunting, survival. He was patient and kind, never raising his voice, always taking time to explain. Thomas especially thrived under his father's guidance, becoming nearly as skilled a woodsman as Ryder himself. Jacob preferred the animals, spending hours in the barn with the livestock, gentle despite his wild energy. The twins were still young, but they showed signs of being as tough and capable as their brothers. On her 30th birthday, Amelia looked around at her life and marveled. 4 children, a home she loved, a husband who still made her heart race when he walked into a room. She had survived the worst life could throw at her and come out the other side stronger. The scared, desperate widow who had traded her ring for flour was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her own strength. That evening, after the children were asleep, Ryder gave her a gift. It was a small wooden box, intricately carved with mountains and pine trees. Inside was a letter written in Ryder's careful hand. The letter read, "My dearest Amelia, when I first saw you trading your ring for flour, I saw a woman of courage. You had lost everything but refused to give up. You fought for your son, for survival, for the future, even when the present seemed hopeless. That strength called to me, made me want to know you, to help you if I could. I bought back your ring on impulse, not knowing where that impulse would lead. Now, 7 years later, I can say it was the best decision I ever made. You have given me purpose, love, family, everything that matters. You are the bravest person I know, and I am honored to walk through life beside you. All my love, always Ryder." Amelia cried, reading it, happy tears that Ryder kissed away. "You gave me back more than my ring," she said. "You gave me back my life." "We gave each other life," Ryder corrected. "I was just surviving before you. Now I am living." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity mixed with the passion that had never faded. Afterward, Amelia fell asleep in Ryder's arms, safe and loved and home. More years passed. Thomas grew up and married a girl from one of the nearby ranches, bringing her home to meet his family. Ryder and Amelia welcomed their daughter-in-law with open arms, and soon Thomas and his wife presented them with a grandchild, a beautiful baby girl. Jacob showed no interest in settling down, preferring to wander the mountains with his father, learning everything he could about the wilderness. The twins grew into lovely young women, Grace quiet and thoughtful, Hope boisterous and outgoing. They helped their mother run the household, learning to cook and sew and manage a home. But Ryder also made sure they learned to shoot, to track, to defend themselves. In the West, women needed to be tough, and his daughters would be prepared for whatever life brought them. When Ryder turned 50, they threw a celebration. Friends came from all over the territory, miners, ranchers, townspeople who had known them over the years. Dutch was there, older and grayer, but still playing his fiddle. They danced and ate and told stories late into the night. At one point, Dutch pulled Ryder aside. "You did good," the old prospector said. "That first day you brought her to the camp, I wondered if you knew what you were getting yourself into. But you did good, Ryder. You built something real." "I got lucky," Ryder said. "Luck had nothing to do with it. You saw someone who needed help and you helped. You loved someone who needed love and you loved her. That is not luck, that is character. And you have got plenty of that." As the party wound down and guests began leaving, Ryder and Amelia stood on their porch, watching the stars come out. The mountains were dark silhouettes against the night sky, and somewhere in the distance a wolf howled, It was the sound of wilderness, of freedom, of home. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if things had gone differently?" Amelia asked. "If you had not been in Pahrump that day, if you had not helped me?" "No," Ryder said honestly, "because it did happen, and that is all that matters. We found each other. We built this life, and I would not change a single moment of it. Not even the hard parts. Especially not the hard parts. They made us who we are." Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Ryder Ashford. I love the man you were when we met, and I love the man you have become. Thank you for buying back my ring. Thank you for buying me flour. Thank you for giving me everything. Thank you for taking a chance on a rough mountain man who did not know what he was doing. Thank you for loving me, for building this family with me, for making every day an adventure. You are my everything, Amelia. Always have been, always will be." They stood like that for a long time, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something beautiful. The ring on Amelia's finger glinted in the starlight, the same ring she had traded in desperation, the same ring Ryder had bought back with no expectation of return. It was a symbol of their story of sacrifice and redemption, of endings and new beginnings, of love that transformed everything it touched. Inside the house, their children and grandchild slept safely. The barn held livestock. The cellar held provisions. The woodshed held fuel. They had everything they needed and more. But the real wealth was standing on that porch, holding each other, knowing they had found something rare and precious in a world that could be cruel and unforgiving. As they finally went inside for the night, Ryder took one last look at the mountains he loved, the wilderness that had been his home and sanctuary. It was still all those things, but now it was so much more. It was where he had found his purpose, his family, his reason for being. It was where a simple act of kindness had grown into a lifetime of love. The fire in the fireplace was burning low, casting a warm glow through the main room. Ryder banked it for the night while Amelia checked on the children. All was well. All was peaceful. They climbed into their bed, the same rope bed Ryder had built years ago, now covered with quilts Amelia had made. She curled into his arms and he held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "Good night, my love," Amelia whispered. "Good night," Ryder replied, kissing the top of her head. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, and snow began to fall softly, adding another layer to the winter covering. Inside, a family slept, safe and warm and loved. And somewhere, in the mystery of how lives intersect and destinies unfold, the universe acknowledged that sometimes, despite all odds, things work out exactly as they should. The story of Amelia and Ryder would be told for generations in those mountains. People would speak of the widow who traded her wedding ring for survival and the mountain man who bought it back and gave her everything. They would tell it as a love story, which it was, but it was more than that. It was a story about courage in the face of desperation, about kindness offered without expectation of reward, about two broken people who found each other and became whole. Years continued to pass as they always do. Ryder's hair turned silver and lines deepened around Amelia's eyes. They grew old together, watching their children grow and have children of their own. The house was constantly filled with grandchildren, then great-grandchildren, each generation adding to the legacy Ryder and Amelia had begun. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered. The house was not big enough to hold everyone, so they set up tables outside despite the spring chill. There was food enough to feed an army prepared by daughters and daughters-in-law and granddaughters. The men stood around talking about ranching and mining and the state of the territory, which had become a state years before. Children ran wild through the trees, their laughter echoing off the mountains. At some point, one of the grandchildren asked how Grandpa and Grandma had met. Amelia and Ryder exchanged glances, then Ryder began to tell the story. He talked about seeing a woman with flour sacks, about buying back a ring, about taking a chance on strangers. Amelia added her perspective, describing the desperation she had felt, the fear, the impossible hope that maybe things could get better. The family listened, rapt. Most had heard the story before, but it never got old. It was their origin story, the foundation of everything they were. "The moral," Ryder said when he finished, is that you never know when a small act of kindness will change everything. I spent $15 on a ring and offered a place to stay to someone who needed help. Those simple decisions gave me everything that matters: love, family, purpose. So be kind, be generous, take chances on people. You never know what might come of it. Also, Amelia added with a smile, never give up. Even when things seem hopeless, keep fighting. I could have given up after James died. I could have accepted Garrett's offer and destroyed myself in the process. Instead, I kept fighting for Thomas and for myself, and that fight led me to Ryder. Good things come to those who refuse to quit. The grandchildren nodded solemnly, taking the lessons to heart. Then someone started playing music, and the serious mood broke. There was dancing and singing, celebration that lasted well into the night. Ryder and Amelia danced together, their movements slower now, but no less graceful, still perfectly in tune with each other after all these years. As the party finally wound down and people began heading home or to the guest rooms and tents set up around the property, Ryder and Amelia found themselves alone on the porch once more. It had become their spot, the place they went to talk and think and simply be together. 40 years, Amelia said, wonder in her voice. How did 40 years pass so quickly? When you are happy, time flies. Ryder took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her knuckles, over the ring that still sat on her finger. Any regrets? Not a single one. You? Only that we did not have more time. 40 years is not enough. Amelia smiled sadly. They were both in their 70s now, old by frontier standards. They had lived full lives, longer than many, but the shadow of mortality was creeping closer. We have had a good run, she said. Better than most. The best, Ryder agreed, because I spent it with you. They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, watching the stars. The mountains stood eternal around them, witness to their love story, guardian of their legacy. Everything they had built would continue after they were gone, and their children, their grandchildren, the land they had cultivated and protected. Do you remember, Amelia said eventually, that first night in the cabin, when I kissed you? Ryder chuckled. I remember being terrified I would do something wrong, say something stupid. I was not exactly experienced in romance. You did not need experience. You just needed to be yourself. That was always enough. You made me want to be better, to be the kind of man worthy of you. You were always worthy, Ryder. From that first moment when you offered to carry my flower, you were worthy. You just did not know it yet. More years passed. Ryder and Amelia grew frailer, their steps slower, their energy less. But their love never dimmed. They still held hands on the porch in the evenings. They still talked for hours about everything and nothing. They still laughed together, remembering shared jokes and memories. When Ryder was 76, he fell ill with a fever that would not break. Amelia nursed him with the same devotion she had shown their children, but deep down, she knew he was slipping away. The doctor came from town but could offer little help. It was simply Ryder's time. On a clear autumn day, with golden aspen leaves falling outside the window, Ryder called his family to his bedside. All his children were there, many of his grandchildren. He looked at each one, his eyes still that striking ice blue despite his age and illness. Take care of each other, he said, his voice weak but firm. Family is everything. Love is everything. Do not waste time on things that do not matter, and always, always be kind. You never know how much a small kindness can change someone's life. He turned to Amelia last. She was sitting beside him, holding his hand, tears streaming down her face. My love, he said softly, my beautiful, brave, amazing love. Thank you for 43 years of happiness. Thank you for saying yes when I offered you flour, when I offered you the cabin, when I offered you my heart. You made my life worth living. And you saved mine, Amelia whispered. You saved me when I had nothing. You gave me everything. I will wait for you, Ryder said. On the other side, wherever that is. I will wait, and when you come, we will have forever. He closed his eyes then, and with his family surrounding him and Amelia's hand in his, Ryder Ashford passed peacefully from the world. The mountains seemed to sigh, acknowledging the loss of one of their own. But in the cabin he had built, surrounded by the family he had helped create, his legacy lived on. Amelia mourned him deeply, but not hopelessly. She knew grief intimately, had survived it once before, and would survive it again. The difference was that this time, she was not alone. She had children and grandchildren who loved her, a home that was secure, a life that had been full and rich. Ryder had given her all of that, and she honored his memory by living fully, not by giving up. She continued to live in the house they had built together, refusing her children's suggestions to move in with one of them. This was her home, filled with memories of the man she had loved. She could feel him in every room, hear his laughter echoing off the walls, see his handiwork in every piece of furniture he had crafted. 3 years after Ryder's death, on a cold winter morning, Amelia woke feeling at peace. She rose slowly, made herself coffee, and sat on the porch wrapped in a heavy blanket. The sun was just rising, painting the snow-covered mountains in shades of pink and gold. It was beautiful, breathtakingly so, and Amelia felt gratitude wash over her. She had lived 80 years, most of them happy. She had known love twice, once with James, briefly but sweetly, and then with Ryder for more than 4 decades. She had raised children who were good people, had seen grandchildren and great-grandchildren come into the world. She had survived poverty and loss and had come out stronger. She had built a life worth living. As the sun rose higher, Amelia closed her eyes and let herself remember. Trading her ring for flour, Ryder carrying those heavy sacks. The cabin that first night, warm and safe. Their wedding in the snow. The birth of their children. 40 years of morning coffee on this porch, watching these mountains, holding hands with the man she loved. All of it, every moment, had been a gift. One of her granddaughters found her later that morning, still sitting on the porch, still wrapped in the blanket. She had passed peacefully in her sleep, a small smile on her face. In her hand, worn smooth from decades of wear, was the gold wedding ring that had started it all. They buried Amelia next to Ryder on a hillside overlooking the valley under a large pine tree. The entire family came, 3 generations strong, to say goodbye. They told stories, they cried, they laughed, remembering her strength and kindness and love. And when the service was over and people began to leave, they all felt the presence of something larger than themselves, the knowledge that love transcends death, that family endures, that the choices we make ripple through time in ways we cannot imagine. The house that Ryder built and Amelia made a home was passed down through the family. It still stands today, expanded and modernized, but still recognizable, still filled with the same love that built it. On the mantel above the fireplace sits a small display, a gold wedding ring, worn and precious, and a carved wooden horse that Ryder made for Thomas all those years ago. Next to them is a framed piece of paper with Ryder's letter to Amelia, the one he gave her on her 30th birthday. New generations of children play in those rooms, learning the story of their great-great-grandparents, the widow who traded her ring for flour, and the mountain man who bought it back and gave her everything. It has become legend in the family, a touchstone, a reminder of what matters. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind whispers through the pines and snow falls softly on the mountains, those who live there swear they can feel the presence of 2 people standing on the porch, holding hands, looking out at the wilderness they loved. It is just a fancy, perhaps, the imagination of those who want to believe in eternal love. But real or imagined, it brings comfort, this sense that Ryder and Amelia are still there, still together, still watching over the family they created. Because love like theirs does not die. It transforms, it endures, it becomes part of the fabric of the world. A simple act of kindness, buying back a ring, offering shelter, taking a chance on a stranger, had rippled through time, creating a legacy of love and family that would last forever. That is the true magic of their story, not in grand gestures or dramatic moments, but in the quiet, steady choosing of love day after day, year after year, until 2 lives became so intertwined they could never truly be separated. In the end, that is all any of us can hope for, to love and be loved, to build something that outlasts us, to make a difference in the lives of others. Ryder and Amelia did all that and more. They took the broken pieces of their lives and forged something beautiful, something lasting, something that would be remembered and celebrated for generations. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, 2 souls stand together on a mountain overlooking all of creation, holding hands, knowing they succeeded. They lived fully, loved deeply, and left the world better than they found it. What more could anyone ask for? The story of she traded her wedding ring for a sack of flour, mountain man, bought the ring back and gave her both is more than just a tale of frontier romance. It is a testament to the power of human kindness, the resilience of the human spirit, and the transformative nature of love. It reminds us that our darkest moments can lead to our greatest joys, that the help we offer to strangers can change lives in ways we never imagined, and that true love is not about grand romantic gestures, but about showing up every day, choosing each other again and again, building a life together one moment at a time. Amelia's courage in trading her ring, Ryder's compassion in buying it back, their willingness to take a chance on each other despite every reason to play it safe, these choices created ripples that touched countless lives. Their children learned the value of kindness and courage. Their grandchildren learned about perseverance and love. And generations yet unborn will hear their story and perhaps be inspired to their own acts of courage and compassion. In the mountains of Nevada, where silver once drew fortune seekers and dreams were made and broken, one cabin stands as a monument to a different kind of fortune. Not silver or gold, but the wealth of family, the riches of love freely given and gratefully received. It started with a ring traded in desperation, bought back in compassion, and became a symbol of everything beautiful and good in the human experience. And that, in the end, is how love stories should be, not fairy tales of princes and princesses, but real stories of real people making hard choices, taking risks, being vulnerable, and finding in each other something precious and true. Amelia and Ryder's story is one for the ages, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, hope is possible, love is real. And sometimes, if we are very brave and very lucky, we find exactly what we need in the most unexpected places. Their legacy lives on, not just in the family that carries their blood, but in every person who hears their story and is inspired to be a little braver, a little kinder, a little more willing to take a chance on love. And perhaps that is the greatest gift they gave not just to each other or their children, but to everyone who would come after, a reminder that love conquers all, that kindness matters, and that the choices we make today can echo through eternity. In the quiet of those mountains, under stars that have witnessed a million stories, the tale of Amelia and Ryder stands out as something special. It is a love story, yes, but also a survival story, an adventure story, a testament to the indomitable human spirit. And it all started with a simple transaction flower for a ring that became the foundation of something extraordinary. That is the power of love, the magic of human connection. That is what happens when two people find each other at exactly the right moment, when compassion meets courage, when loneliness transforms into partnership. That is the story of she traded her wedding ring for a sack of flour, mountain man, bought the ring back and gave her both. And it is a story worth remembering, worth telling, worth celebrating for all the ages to come.